Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome back to episode 6 of the Best and Worst of Indie Books. I actually didn't wait too long this time. The minute I had the books, I was like, awesome, let's jump right in and get it done. And I read these books within a fairly short time period of each other. Both of them were read during the last week in October for the Witchathon, although technically one of them I wasn't supposed to read for the Witchathon, but we'll get into that. So, as usual, I am going to start with my worst and then switch to the best because I always want to end on a positive note. And unfortunately, the worst one today is probably more so because it was a disappointment personally to me than anything else, and that is The Sekhmet Bed by Libby Hawker. I adored Ancient Egypt when I was a kid. I wanted to be an Egyptologist. I watched all the documentaries. I asked for books on Egypt for Christmas. You can see back here, I've got my doll. I have a clay pyramid bank that I made in 7th grade. I was hardcore. So when I saw that there was a book on BookBub that was essentially the origin story of Hatshepsut, I was all for it. Now, this first book in the series deals more with Hatshepsut's mother, Ahmose, and her going from just Pharaoh's daughter to the next Pharaoh's wife, as well as her sister also becomes a Pharaoh's wife because this is ancient Egypt and sisters both marrying the same dude is a regular thing here. Now, that premise sounded really intriguing, and for a little bit, it was pretty nice. And then the girl-on-girl hate started. So almost immediately after they're both announced to become the next wives of the next Pharaoh Thutmose, they start fighting with each other. And Mutnofret, her sister, is scheming and is doing all these backhanded things to make Ahmose look bad because she's annoyed that Ahmose is the great wife and she's not. And they are effectively both fighting for the affection of this man, which is weird because they're both married to him. So what are you really winning? And it's supposed to be the spot of being the great wife. And Ahmose, by having all of these connections to the gods, I guess, kind of wins that spot purely to make Thutmose look like he's legitimate when he technically wouldn't have been in line. He was actually the friend of the previous pharaoh. It's all pretty interesting, but a very large portion of the book, the first third, is literally just them fighting with each other and Ahmose having to fight with her sister. And I'm looking at this why? The thing with ancient Egypt is we know names and general structure of stuff, but we don't know a lot of inherent details about their lives. For all that they wrote a lot in hieroglyphics, not everyone kept daily logs or anything. So a lot is still up in the air that an author could play with. So it's not like this was written in stone in hieroglyphics, LOL, that an author would have to follow it to be historically accurate. We're not even sure which kid belonged to which wife. We know that these kids were all of Thutmose, but we're gray on some areas. So that seemed extra to me. And then later on in the book, Ahmose kind of falls under the trap of fighting to keep her position as great wife and starts scheming and does a lot of horrible things. And Thutmose is all gone off on his military campaigns while Ahmose is basically just using underhanded tactics and things to get more power. And then it all blows up in her face and she's like, oh no, how could this have happened to me? And I'm looking at it you did it to yourself. You schemed and it backfired. Yeah, it happens, but I don't know if you're supposed to feel bad for her. I just found her whiny. But even then, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not really here for Ahmose. I'm here for Hatshepsut. She's the one we're here for. So then Hatshepsut is born. And there's this big thing of Hatshepsut is supposed to be a prince. That's what Ahmose says, that the gods told her she would give birth to a prince or the next pharaoh, even though she will not give birth to a boy. And everyone's like, well, no, she's a girl. And there's this basically Ahmose is basically trying to convince everyone that her daughter is trans, almost. And I'm not against a historical trans story. I think it would actually be very fun. The problem with this one is that they use she's a boy on the inside, or she has a boy Ka, or it's very confusing because almost even when she insists that Hatshepsut has a boy Ka, still refers to her as a her. So like I'm not exactly sure if it was supposed to be like trans or genderqueer or what the take was supposed to be. But regardless of any of that, the problem I had with it is that it was made out to be like Hatshepsut will be this great pharaoh because she has this boy Ka, this boy soul. Because no. She's actually male or has inner male, or I'm not trying to misgender. It was very like new agey, mystical, like magic-y, and they both referred to the child as a she, even while saying she's got a boy. It was confusing, but it was basically that this male part of her is the reason she'd be a great leader. And so it's kind of that, women are only good leaders if they're like men. And I hate that narrative. And I know that narrative was very like prevalent throughout history, where there could be these fabulous female leaders, but everyone's like, oh, they're the exception to the rule because they act like men. Like, no, they were, important because they were women. And so I really was not a fan of that at all. And in general, I read this in one day, as well as 3 other books, because I was doing a 24-hour readathon as part of the Witchathon. And it like destroyed my mood that day. Like having a book that I had to force myself to get through was part of the reason that I hated the 24-hour readathon, and I probably won't try another one. And it sucks because I love this time period. Like this is right in that like late dynasty sweet spot, like way after the pyramids, that I particularly enjoyed researching when I was a kid. But this was just, there was no reason. You could have just said, she had a vision that Hatshepsut would be a good pharaoh. And she's a girl, but she'll be a good pharaoh. You didn't have to be like, oh, she'll be good because she's secretly a boy. You didn't have to have the girl on girl hate. You don't have to have anything. None of that is written down in Egyptian history. So it wasn't like it's historical accuracy. And it just bugged me. And I realized that I am getting a little heated. So let's bring it back. Go back to the green zone, as we tell the kids at work. In general, this was just a huge letdown, and was, despite the intriguing premise, was so bogged down with a protagonist I didn't really like, and a premise that was lost on petty things. So I gave this 2 stars, because as usual, for the majority of books, if I can finish them, they will get at least 2 stars, and the Egyptian-ness, the actual like scenic aspects and the descriptions were fairly well done. It's just the actual plot and the characters annoyed me. But moving on, let's go on to something a little bit happier, and I really love the best of in this case, and I technically was not supposed to read it. Like I mentioned before, I read this during the Witchathon. This was not on my Witchathon TBR. I was actually supposed to read Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, but that book is horrible to read when you're in a readathon because the first several chapters are dry and drag. And so I'm like, well, I want to read a book in 2 days. I can't stick with this. So I went through my Kindle and I'm like, what have I downloaded off of BookBub lately? And the cover immediately grabbed my attention, and I think it'll grab yours too, and that is Bless Her Dead Heart by Meg Collette. This is a Southern paranormal mystery / thriller all about a woman who has had some fairly traumatic aspects of her past that leaves her feeling chained to this small town, and she found the dead body of an old high school friend with a strange symbol carved into him, and our story begins when she finds the pastor of the church she lives near dead the same way, and she knows that whatever killed her friend is back, and it is not of this world. At the same point, another man, strange, mysterious man, comes walking into town, and we're not sure how he's connected to all of this, but we know that he's connected. Now, right away, I could kind of guess some things, and this book needs a giant content warning for sexual assault and rape. Nothing is written out into graphic detail, but I will say that there are actually a couple characters that it ties into, so very much be aware of that. There was also an MM romance that was not played quite the way I wanted it to be played. It wasn't fetishized, it wasn't problematic, just I'm really hoping that in future books, and this is a series, they will get their own emphasis, if that makes sense. And I don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil anything, but I really appreciated that it was in there. The mystery was very, very nice, and the flashbacks, while being very painful and uncomfortable to read, offered a lot to this story, and you really feel our protagonist Loie's pain. I loved the names in here. I'm not quite sure where the name Loie comes from. It's basically Joey with an L, but her best friend's name, who's a woman, is Dale. I got a thing for women with masculine names. I love it. There's another woman part of the story that's named Frankie. I don't know. Those are just my things. We do have a romance, which I loved that it was properly messy. What I mean by that is, it wasn't they had an issue, but it was because of a miscommunication that was, solved in a conversation. No, there was serious transgressions that needed to be, addressed and gone over and gotten over, essentially. And the creepy factor was always there, the otherworldly factor. Near the end, the creature, the description of it was just, So, that's why I kind of, I'm not quite sure whether you'd call this thriller or horror, because a lot of the horror aspects aren't as prominent as they are in a lot of other horror, but it definitely feels like a little bit more than a thriller. So it's kind of in that gray area. There are also some times where I felt like it was trying a little bit too hard to tell you that it was set in the South. I lost count of the number of times that Loie mentioned sweet tea. And I've got family in the South, but I haven't spent a long period of time living there, so I don't know if they actually talk about sweet tea that much. But I was like, okay, we get it. This is the South. But there are some other sub-themes about what it is to keep things hidden and societal pressures that push characters to do things, essentially trap themselves to avoid being known a certain way in town, and that's a big deal. Dale, the best friend, is that kind of popular girl, but some serious background issues that come to light. Her brother is adorable. I love how both the Rose siblings and Loie are all best friends. It felt like a nice group of people instead of just girl and best friend. There was just so much ambiance. I loved that. And in general, as much as I really wanted to read Gideon the Ninth, I actually ended up sending it back to the library because I just couldn't get through it, and there were other people waiting on the hold list. I'm so glad I switched to this one randomly because it's great. It's spooky. The cover is gorgeous. I am definitely going to continue with the series. I am guessing by the synopsis that I read, and I'm forgetting the title of it, cover here, that it focuses more on Dale and her story, and girlfriend needs some time to kind of work through things. So I'm really excited to get back to that and get to see her take on it and maybe her discovering some of the supernatural things, because this is definitely the beginning of a series. It's not wrapped up, but it's definitely a very big conflict that I really can't explain because spoilers. So in general, if you like spooky things, if you like things with a lot of ambiance and death, and again, beware of those content warnings for sexual assault, then I think if you can get past that, you'll really enjoy this one. I would love to keep talking more about my favorite, and it's always hard to talk about my favorite in these episodes because I really want you to go read them yourself. So please. But anyway, I am getting all worked up to do more in December coming up. I was not going to do much with any kind of readathon vlog moving forward. However, my in December recommendations list got so much love so far and beyond most of my videos that I kind of want to keep that energy going. So I might be doing full in December vlogs. Probably not a 24-hour readathon. I considered it, but maybe not. But I'm definitely going to step up and put out more content for that. So if you love indie things, please stick around. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.